The temples of the ancient world have always held a certain mystique, standing as silent sentinels over the centuries, watching civilizations rise and fall around them. From the sun-baked ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the shadowed sanctuaries of the dense Amazon jungle, each structure whispers secrets that few dare to interpret fully. At first glance, these temples appear as simple monuments to devotion, artistry, or political power. But a closer examination reveals patterns and symbols that do not belong merely to decoration. These are deliberate, encoded messages left behind by hands long vanished, messages that hint at knowledge far beyond what we assume ancient societies possessed. It is a knowledge that, if decoded, could reveal warnings of catastrophe, events so massive they could reshape landscapes, topple kingdoms, and alter the course of human history. Walking through the corridors of these temples, one cannot help but feel a lingering sense of unease. The carvings, often overlooked or dismissed as ornamental motifs, carry intricate patterns, spirals, serpents, celestial symbols, geometric shapes, and recurring numerical sequences. Each has a precision that suggests intent, a deliberate arrangement that seems designed not merely to please the eye, but to convey meaning. Scholars have debated their purpose for centuries. Many attribute them to cultural aesthetics, rituals of worship, or mythological storytelling. Yet, what if these interpretations are only scratching the surface? What if the symbols conceal messages meant to withstand the erosion of time, cryptic warnings encoded in stone, waiting for someone perceptive enough to decipher them? Take, for example, the recurring spiral motifs found across continents, from the Neolithic carvings in Newgrange, Ireland, to the ancient temples of South America. Spirals often represent cycles, time, or cosmic movement, but could they also point to something more precise? Cyclical patterns of disaster, astronomical events, or natural catastrophes that repeat over centuries. Likewise, serpentine carvings appear in cultures separated by oceans and millennia, from the serpents of Mesoamerican temples to those slithering along Egyptian sanctuaries. While mainstream scholarship interprets serpents as religious or fertility symbols, alternative perspectives suggest they could represent danger, warning signs, or the return of cataclysmic forces. These motifs, repeated across distant lands, hint at a knowledge that transcended local beliefs, a knowledge shared by the architects and priests who built these sacred spaces, preserved meticulously for future generations. Even the positioning of these temples cannot be ignored. Many align with the sun during solstices or with specific constellations, reflecting an understanding of astronomy that was remarkably precise for the era. Consider the way certain temple entrances align perfectly with the rising sun on particular days of the year, casting shadows that illuminate hidden carvings or chambers. Such alignments suggest a deliberate design to communicate messages at specific times, almost as if the temples themselves were celestial calendars warning of events that could affect human civilization. The blend of architecture, astronomy, and symbolism indicates a sophisticated understanding of natural cycles, one that could have been used to anticipate catastrophic events. What makes these warnings even more intriguing is the selective silence of recorded history. While temples remain, the knowledge encoded within them has often been lost, misunderstood, or deliberately ignored. Ancient texts, inscriptions, or oral traditions that might explain these carvings have vanished or been suppressed. As a result, much of the significance has been reduced to myth, folklore, or vague speculation. Yet traces remain, clues left in carvings, the alignment of stones, or patterns repeated across different temples, that continue to defy conventional explanation. It is these clues that suggest a purpose beyond ritual, a warning etched into stone, capable of transcending the lifetimes of those who first crafted it. Walking into an ancient temple, it becomes clear that these were more than places of worship. They were repositories of knowledge, time capsules of understanding encoded in ways that could survive centuries, perhaps even millennia. Every carving, every geometric pattern, Every corridor and hidden chamber seems to challenge us. Look closer. Interpret correctly. Understand before it is too late. It is a chilling thought, imagining that these ancient architects possessed foresight so profound they could anticipate disasters hundreds or even thousands of years into the future. The mystery deepens when we consider that such symbols recur in distant lands, across cultures that supposedly had no contact with one another. How could such knowledge spread so widely, so accurately, unless there was a shared understanding, a universal language of warning? In this section, we begin to peel back the layers of obscurity. We explore the silent warnings etched into stone, the deliberate placements of carvings, the uncanny alignments, and the motifs repeated across continents. We glimpse a world in which temples were not just spiritual centers, but also vaults of encoded knowledge. A world where ancient people may have sought to alert future generations about dangers lurking beyond their immediate comprehension. As we proceed, we will uncover more evidence that these warnings were neither random nor purely symbolic. They were messages meant to endure, messages that point toward catastrophe, waiting for those willing to see beyond the surface. The silent stones have waited millennia, observing the rise and fall of civilizations, and still, they whisper. Those who listen carefully may begin to hear the hidden message, a warning from the past. Catastrophe is not only recorded in myth and legend, but also carved into the very fabric of our ancient temples. To understand it is to glimpse a reality far more complex and far more urgent than conventional history allows. The journey begins here, with the first signs etched in stone, and as we follow these clues, we may discover that the warnings were never meant to be ignored. The origins of the forbidden manuscript are as enigmatic as its contents. Scholars and conspiracy theorists alike have debated for centuries who could have conceived such a work, blending knowledge, foresight, and an almost mystical understanding of history yet to come. There are no definitive records, only fragments of accounts, scattered across monastic libraries, private journals, and marginal notes in the dusty corners of Europe's oldest archives. Some claim it was the work of a reclusive monk, hidden away in the candlelit recesses of a medieval abbey, who spent decades observing the world and recording not only the events of his time, but visions of centuries ahead. Others whisper of secret societies, brotherhoods devoted to preserving forbidden knowledge, whose members encoded their wisdom in texts meant to survive only if the world was ready to understand them. The question of authorship is deeply intertwined with a manuscript's purpose. If it was written by a single visionary, one wonders what experiences or revelations could have allowed them to foresee wars, revolutions, and upheavals that would occur long after their death. If instead, it was the product of a collective, a clandestine order working in secret, then the manuscript becomes more than a prophecy. It becomes a carefully orchestrated attempt to shape the future, to guide those who are capable of interpreting it toward understanding or action. These possibilities, though seemingly fantastical, are supported by the manuscript structure. Each section flows seamlessly into the next, as though the author, or authors, understood the patterns of history with unnerving clarity. Medieval Europe offers the earliest glimpses of the manuscript's existence, though always shrouded in mystery. Monks recorded rumors in the margins of theological texts, references so cryptic that only a few contemporaries understood their significance. Some mention a book of shadows and wars, others a codex of the future, but all agree that it was considered dangerous knowledge, capable of upsetting rulers and destabilizing kingdoms. Stories tell of scholars who vanished after claiming to study it, leaving behind only cryptic notes or fragmented pages. Some historians dismiss these accounts as exaggeration or superstition, yet the consistency of certain details across distant regions and decades suggests something far more deliberate. The manuscript's creators and keepers were determined that it survive, yet only under the most careful eyes. There is also the tantalizing possibility that the manuscript's author or authors were not of this world in the conventional sense. Esoteric theorists have long suggested that the knowledge encoded within could not have come from ordinary observation alone. Its insights into human behavior, political strategy, and the unfolding of technological innovation seem to anticipate patterns decades, sometimes centuries in advance. Some scholars interpret this as evidence of divine inspiration, others as the result of secretive networks of knowledge, possibly connecting scholars across countries and generations. Whatever the truth, the manuscript's origins remain cloaked in shadow, offering tantalizing glimpses without ever revealing the full picture. The choice to remain hidden, or to encode knowledge so deeply, is itself a reflection of the manuscript's danger. If the text had been widely accessible, the consequences might have been catastrophic. Kings and generals who understood its predictions could have wielded unprecedented power. Ordinary citizens exposed to its prophecies might have caused panic or upheaval. This necessity for secrecy implies a sophistication in planning, suggesting that whoever created the manuscript anticipated the far-reaching implications of their work. Their goal was not simply to record, but to protect knowledge until the world was prepared, or perhaps to ensure that only those capable of comprehending it could ever act on it. Speculation about authorship is complicated further by the manuscript's stylistic inconsistencies. Some sections are precise, almost clinical in their description of events, while others are allegorical, poetic, or symbolic. It is as if multiple minds contributed, each bringing a distinct approach, one observing patterns of conflict, another encoding philosophical or spiritual insights, another warning of the moral consequences of humanity's actions. This diversity has fueled debate among scholars. Is it a single polymath, a collective effort, or a compilation updated over generations by different custodians? Each theory carries its own implications, yet none can be confirmed with certainty. Despite the uncertainties, the allure of discovering the manuscript's author persists. The very idea of tracing the hand that foresaw centuries of conflict ignites both fascination and fear. Was the author motivated by altruism, by a desire to guide humanity, or by obsession, ambition, and a hunger for control? Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that the manuscript was created precisely to test humanity's response to knowledge, to see how far curiosity and ambition would carry those who dared to seek it. Every fragment that survives hints at intelligence far beyond its time, a mind or minds that understood not only history, but the mechanisms by which it repeats, escalates, and shapes the fate of nations. In the end, the question of who wrote the forbidden manuscript may remain forever unanswered, and perhaps that is precisely how it was intended. The mystery itself preserves its power, compelling generations to search, to decode, and to speculate. The shadow of its origins stretches across centuries, reminding us that some knowledge is too potent, too dangerous to ever be fully revealed. Yet this very uncertainty, the tantalizing suggestion of hidden wisdom waiting to be discovered, is what keeps the manuscript alive in legend, in whispers, and in the imagination of those willing to chase its secrets into the dark corridors of history. Symbols are the language of the ancients. Unlike spoken words, which fade with time, symbols endure, etched in stone, carved into wood, painted on walls, or molded into bronze and clay. Across the globe, in temples separated by oceans and millennia, similar motifs appear with startling consistency. Spirals, serpents, concentric circles, and geometric patterns emerge in Sumerian ziggurats, Egyptian sanctuaries, Mesoamerican pyramids, and Neolithic stone circles. While mainstream archaeology often interprets these as decorative or religious imagery, a deeper investigation suggests that they served as a complex, deliberate language, one capable of communicating knowledge about cycles, celestial events, and even potential catastrophes. The very act of encoding knowledge in symbols indicates an awareness of permanence. Written text decay, parchment rots, and ink fades, but stone endures. This realization may have led ancient architects and priests to adopt symbolism as their most reliable medium of communication. In the case of catastrophic events, floods, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, or cosmic disruptions, the stakes were too high to rely on fragile forms of record-keeping. Every line carved, every spiral etched, every serpent coiled along a temple wall could have been a calculated attempt to preserve vital information for distant generations. Consider the recurring spiral motif. On the surface, spirals might seem decorative or representative of the sun, growth, or life. But spirals also represent cycles, repetition, and movement, a visual shorthand for events that recur across time. In ancient contexts, spirals could encode complex knowledge about celestial cycles, seasonal changes, or environmental patterns that precede catastrophic events. The recurrence of spirals in distant cultures suggests that this was not an isolated aesthetic choice, but part of a broader symbolic lexicon, one designed to warn, inform, and guide. Serpents, too, play a critical role. In many cultures, serpents symbolize duality, life and death, creation and destruction, knowledge and danger. In temple carvings, serpents often appear in conjunction with spirals or celestial motifs, hinting at an intimate understanding of natural and cosmic forces. The coiling of the serpent may represent cycles of catastrophe, warning of a return of destructive forces that could reshape the landscape or threaten entire civilizations. Ancient storytellers, priests, and architects may have been translating observations of the natural world into a symbolic language, ensuring that future generations could interpret the patterns even if the precise written knowledge was lost. Another important dimension is numerology. Many temples encode numbers and mathematical patterns into their design. Step counts, column placements, and even the spacing of carvings often correspond to celestial cycles, lunar phases, or planetary alignments. In some cases, these numbers appear in sequences that correspond to historical cycles of catastrophe, such as flooding or volcanic activity. While mainstream scholars may dismiss these numerical patterns as coincidence or ritualistic symmetry, the precision and repetition across distant cultures suggest intentionality. Numbers, combined with visual motifs, create a layered symbolic language capable of preserving knowledge across centuries. Geometry also plays a crucial role. From pyramidal structures to circular enclosures, ancient architects employed geometric principles that often carry symbolic significance beyond aesthetics. The angles of temple walls, the placement of altars, and the alignment of entrances frequently correspond to solar, lunar, or planetary positions. Geometry allowed these civilizations to encode astronomical and environmental knowledge in a format that could be read by those trained to interpret it. In essence, temples became encoded observatories, capturing data in stone and symbol for posterity. Importantly, these symbols rarely appear in isolation. They are often repeated across walls, floors, altars, and ceilings, creating a visual rhythm that reinforces their meaning. The repetition functions like punctuation in a language, emphasizing key concepts and ensuring that important warnings are not overlooked. Some scholars note that certain symbols appear only in specific chambers or during certain alignments of sunlight or shadow, suggesting that the full meaning of the symbols could only be understood under precise conditions. This indicates a sophisticated understanding of both the physical world and the human perceptual experience. Across cultures, the convergence of similar symbols, geometric patterns, and numerical sequences raises compelling questions about knowledge transmission. How did civilizations separated by thousands of miles and years arrive at similar symbolic systems? Some researchers propose the existence of a shared ancestral knowledge, perhaps passed down orally or through early trade networks. Others suggest independent yet parallel development, driven by universal human observation of natural and cosmic cycles. Regardless of the mechanism, the result is clear. These symbols were intentional, purposeful, and laden with meaning. In many cases, myths and oral traditions offer a key to interpreting these symbols. Stories of floods, celestial upheavals, and divine retribution often mirror the motifs carved into temple walls. Spirals may represent the cyclical rise and fall of civilizations. Serpents may signal the return of cataclysmic events. Geometric patterns may encode the timing or location of disaster. By cross-referencing these myths with symbolic patterns, researchers can begin to reconstruct the intended message, revealing a warning system that transcends time and language. It is also notable that certain symbols appear in unexpected locations, such as hidden chambers, ceilings, or floors, accessible only through precise alignment or careful exploration. This suggests that the messages were intended for a select few who could understand and act upon them, rather than the general populace. The secrecy adds a conspiratorial layer, hinting at knowledge preserved deliberately from outsiders, perhaps to prevent panic, misuse, or misinterpretation. In this sense, the symbolic language served both as a warning and as a form of protection. As we examine the language of symbols, a pattern emerges. Ancient civilizations were not merely recording events. They were encoding predictions. They observed patterns in the heavens, cycles of natural phenomena, and historical repetitions, translating these observations into a durable, interpretable language. These symbols were carefully crafted to endure beyond lifetimes, to survive cultural collapse, and to convey critical warnings to those who could decipher them. They represent a bridge between human perception, observation, and foresight, demonstrating a level of sophistication often underestimated by modern scholars. Ultimately, the language of symbols in ancient temples reveals a worldview that blends spirituality, science, and survival. These civilizations understood that their knowledge could outlive them, and they took extraordinary measures to encode it for the future. Spirals, serpents, numbers, and geometry were not mere decoration. They were a deliberate method of communicating knowledge about cycles of catastrophe and cosmic order. By studying these symbols carefully, we begin to glimpse a profound intelligence at work, one that sought to warn, educate, and preserve understanding for generations yet to come. The significance of this symbolic language becomes even more apparent as we move forward to explore forbidden texts, lost manuscripts, and cryptic inscriptions that complement these carvings. Together, the symbols and texts form a cohesive warning system, a hidden narrative of catastrophe written in stone, myth, and geometry. For those willing to look beyond the surface, the language of symbols offers not only insight into the past, but also a cautionary message for the present and future, a reminder that the ancients, in their wisdom, may have foreseen events that humanity is still unprepared to confront. Buried beneath layers of time, dust, and deliberate erasure, there exist texts and manuscripts that hold fragments of forbidden knowledge, ancient writings that speak of disasters, celestial omens, and cycles of destruction. These lost texts often contradict the sanitized versions of history preserved by mainstream scholars. In some cases, they were deliberately destroyed or hidden, their contents deemed too dangerous, heretical, or disruptive to the established order. Yet, through careful scholarship, obscure archives, and chance discoveries, fragments have survived, offering tantalizing glimpses into the intentions of those who encoded warnings into stone and symbol. These manuscripts reveal that the ancients were acutely aware of forces beyond human control, forces capable of reshaping civilizations in an instant. Consider the Sumerian king lists and associated clay tablets. While many historians focus on their genealogical value, certain passages hint at cataclysmic floods, cosmic alignments, and the rise and fall of civilizations in ways that appear to mirror geological and astronomical phenomena. Some tablets describe cycles of the heavens and cryptically reference the consequences when these cycles align with terrestrial vulnerabilities. Similarly, apocryphal Egyptian texts, often excluded from canonical historical studies, mention celestial omens, unusual comets, blazing meteors, and solar anomalies that preceded periods of famine, pestilence, or societal upheaval. These texts, when interpreted alongside temple carvings, suggest a deliberate, encoded warning system linking celestial events to terrestrial disaster. In the Americas, codices, such as the Dresden Codex, preserve astronomical records and prophetic charts. Mainstream interpretation often reduces these to ritualistic calendars or ceremonial schedules. Yet closer inspection reveals more. Certain cycles correspond to rare celestial events like Venus transits, eclipses, and solar alignments, all of which appear to coincide with catastrophic events described in local myths. The codices, like the temples themselves, encode knowledge in layers of symbolism, an interweaving of practical astronomy, mystical insight, and disaster prediction. The creators of these manuscripts were not merely chroniclers of time. They were archivists of catastrophe, embedding warnings in a system resistant to the erosion of centuries. Perhaps the most mysterious of all are texts deliberately shrouded in secrecy. Across civilizations, from priestly orders to monastic scribes, knowledge was preserved for select eyes. Some manuscripts were hidden deep within temple libraries or underground vaults, their existence known only to initiates. Others were deliberately destroyed when they threatened political or religious authority. This selective preservation suggests a conscious awareness of the power and danger inherent in this knowledge. It raises the question, if these warnings were truly so significant, why were they withheld from the wider population? Perhaps it was to prevent panic, to safeguard secrets from misuse, or to ensure that only those who could understand and act responsibly would have access. The interplay between these lost texts and the symbolic language of temples is striking. Many carvings and motifs make little sense when examined alone, but when considered alongside fragments of ancient manuscripts, patterns emerge. Spirals may represent cycles described in texts. Serpents may correspond to celestial bodies or natural forces. Geometric patterns may encode dates, durations, or probabilities of catastrophic events. These combinations suggest a sophisticated system in which multiple mediums, symbol, structure, and writing, work in concert to preserve and communicate vital knowledge. Such redundancy would ensure that even if one medium were lost, others could still transmit the message. Even modern scholars have stumbled upon hints of suppressed knowledge. Marginal notes in medieval manuscripts, overlooked translations, and forgotten treatises often reveal glimpses of alternative interpretations, references to floods, fiery skies, or mysterious alignments that were censored or ignored in mainstream historical records. Some researchers claim that religious authorities, kings, or ruling elites deliberately erased these warnings to maintain control, fearing that awareness of such cycles could destabilize society. The result is a fragmented historical record, where the most critical information, warnings about disaster, has been scattered, hidden, or misinterpreted. Yet these lost texts, when examined alongside temple symbols, offer profound insight into how ancient civilizations understood the world. They reveal an awareness that history is cyclical, that celestial forces influence terrestrial events, and that catastrophic events were not random, but predictable if one understood the patterns. Many of these texts use allegory, myth, and symbolism precisely to encode this knowledge in a way that could survive the ravages of time while remaining interpretable to those trained to read it. Deciphering them requires not only linguistic skill, but also an understanding of the symbolic and astronomical systems they reference, a combination of scholarship, intuition, and imagination. The convergence of lost texts and temple symbolism also points to a deliberate attempt at foresight. These civilizations were not merely recording events after they occurred. They were anticipating future catastrophes and embedding warnings in the cultural and architectural record. In doing so, they created a bridge between the present and distant generations, a form of time travel in stone and ink. Modern humans, arriving thousands of years later, are the recipients of these messages, if only we can learn to read them correctly. This section also raises an unsettling possibility. What if some knowledge was deliberately obscured because it predicted catastrophes humanity is still vulnerable to today? Could ancient civilizations have left a roadmap for survival, hidden within their temples and manuscripts, waiting for a time when it would be most needed? The implications are staggering. The texts, the symbols, and the alignments collectively suggest that our ancestors understood cycles of destruction with far greater clarity than we have given them credit for. Ignoring these warnings could mean overlooking patterns that have repeated throughout history and may yet repeat in the future. In essence, forbidden knowledge and lost texts form the missing link between ancient symbols and the catastrophes they predict. They offer context, explanation, and depth, revealing that the warnings encoded in stone were never arbitrary. They were purposeful, deliberate, and informed by observation, experience, and perhaps even a profound understanding of cosmic and natural laws. The challenge lies in interpreting these messages accurately, connecting the fragments, and recognizing the subtle interplay between symbol, text, and alignment. Only then can we begin to understand the full scope of the warnings left behind by civilizations long vanished. As we continue our journey, these lost texts will serve as guideposts, illuminating the deeper significance of temple symbols, celestial alignments, and catastrophic cycles. Together, they reveal a world in which knowledge was encoded not for fame or wealth, but for survival. A world where understanding and heeding the messages of the past could make the difference between continuity and collapse. The sky has always been a canvas for the ancients, a vast, unchanging backdrop that held both wonder and warning. Long before modern astronomy, civilizations across the globe observed the heavens with meticulous care, tracking the movement of the sun, moon, planets, and stars. They noticed patterns, repetitions, and anomalies, celestial events that coincided with floods, droughts, or societal upheavals. Temples, it seems, were more than earthly sanctuaries. They were observatories built to harness sunlight, shadow, and star alignments to encode warnings for future generations. Every angle, every corridor, every carved relief might have been designed with astronomical precision to convey knowledge that could prevent catastrophe, or at least prepare for it. Consider the temples of Egypt, aligned not randomly, but with the movements of the stars and planets. The great temple of Abu Simbel, for instance, was constructed so that twice a year, the rising sun illuminates the statues of deities within, except for one minor figure, left in shadow. Scholars debate its purpose, some suggesting ritual significance. Yet the precision required indicates a deep understanding of celestial mechanics. The placement may also encode a calendar of significant events, possibly aligned with natural cycles or rare astronomical occurrences. Such alignments suggest the architects sought to record knowledge through light and shadow, creating a tangible, observable link between celestial phenomena and earthly warning. In Mesoamerica, Mayan temples provide another extraordinary example. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of Kukulkan produces the famous serpent-shaped shadow along its staircase during the equinox. While this is celebrated as an artistic achievement, its underlying purpose may go beyond spectacle. The alignment tracks solar movement with incredible accuracy, indicating not just a ceremonial design, but also a potential system for marking key dates related to environmental cycles or celestial events. The Mayans were meticulous astronomers, and the repetition of such alignments across their sacred sites hints at a deliberate attempt to record and perhaps predict critical natural or cosmic occurrences. Celestial alignments were not limited to individual temples, but often guided the placement of entire complexes. In some cases, temples were built to mirror the constellations, allowing their shadows and reflections to track celestial movement with pinpoint accuracy. Consider the megalithic stone circles of Europe or the pyramids of Teotihuacan. Their orientation suggests an awareness of solstices, equinoxes, and other rare celestial phenomena. These alignments, combined with symbols carved into the structures, create a sophisticated code linking terrestrial architecture to the heavens. A code that may contain warnings about impending disasters, both local and global. It is not just the sun that captured the attention of ancient architects. The moon, planets, and even rare celestial events were carefully observed. Solar and lunar eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and cometary appearances were meticulously recorded, often depicted in carvings or encoded into temple geometry. Many cultures associated these events with cataclysm, interpreting anomalies in the sky as omens. By aligning temples with these events, the ancients created a system in which observation and architecture functioned together to preserve warnings across generations. This dual approach ensured that even if knowledge of the language of symbols or lost texts faded, the heavens themselves could continue to communicate critical information. Interestingly, certain celestial alignments only occur once in decades or centuries, suggesting that temples may have been designed to capture rare, significant events rather than daily occurrences. For instance, some Egyptian temples align with particular stars during rare stellar conjunctions, casting specific shadows on carved reliefs. In Mesoamerica, pyramid staircases and observatories allow sunlight and shadow to interact in precise ways during solstices or equinoxes. The care and complexity involved imply that these were not merely religious or decorative choices. They were calculated to encode time-specific messages, possibly linked to environmental cycles, catastrophic events, or societal warnings. The relationship between celestial events and human catastrophe is further supported by myth and legend. Across cultures, unusual celestial phenomena are often described as precursors to disaster. Comets, eclipses, and fiery meteors appear in the myths of China, Babylon, Egypt, and the Americas as harbingers of calamity. These stories may have roots in actual observation, capturing moments when astronomical events coincided with floods, volcanic eruptions, or other cataclysmic events. Temples, aligned to these celestial occurrences, become a bridge between observation, myth, and practical warning, translating abstract cosmic patterns into messages that could be understood and acted upon by future generations. Moreover, these alignments often intersect with the symbolic language encoded within the temples. Spirals may represent the orbit of celestial bodies. Serpents could depict the movement of planets or comets. Geometric shapes may correspond to angles or distances between stars. Through this combination of symbol and alignment, ancient architects created multi-layered systems capable of preserving knowledge with remarkable durability. These encoded messages were not intended for casual interpretation. They required careful observation, understanding of astronomy, and awareness of cultural symbolism. In essence, the temples acted as both observatories and libraries, silently recording the cosmos and its potential influence on Earth. The implications of such precision are staggering. Ancient civilizations may have observed patterns that allowed them to predict environmental cycles, celestial anomalies, or even catastrophic events long before modern science developed the tools to measure them. Alignments and symbolic motifs were part of a comprehensive knowledge system that blended astronomy, environmental observation, and myth. This sophisticated integration ensured that warnings about potential disaster could survive generations, encoded in stone, symbol, and the very position of sacred architecture. As we study these alignments, it becomes clear that ancient architects were more than builders. They were careful chroniclers of the heavens, translating cosmic patterns into terrestrial warnings. Their work suggests a profound understanding of natural and celestial cycles, combined with the foresight to preserve that knowledge in a durable, interpretable form. Every shadow, every illuminated statue, every alignment serves as a silent testament to their observation and intent. In connecting temples, symbols, and celestial alignments, we begin to perceive a complex system of warning and preservation, one that spans continents and millennia. This system illustrates that ancient societies were not passive observers, but active recorders and predictors of catastrophic events. Their temples are more than monuments. They are messages meticulously designed to transmit essential knowledge to distant generations. By observing the heavens and encoding those observations into stone, the ancients ensured that their warnings would endure, awaiting a future capable of interpreting them. Through these celestial alignments, we glimpse a civilization that understood time and disaster in ways modern humans are only beginning to appreciate. They observed patterns, translated them into architecture and symbolism, and embedded warnings capable of outlasting centuries. The sky was not simply a source of awe. It was a medium of communication, a silent partner in the creation of temples, symbols, and knowledge that continues to speak to us across the ages. Stories have always been humanity's way of preserving memory, encoding knowledge, and passing wisdom across generations. Ancient myths, while often dismissed as mere superstition or allegorical tales, contain striking parallels with the symbols and celestial alignments found in temples. Across the world, these myths frequently describe catastrophic events, floods that swallow civilizations, fire raining from the sky, skies darkened with smoke, or earthquakes that crack the earth itself. At first glance, these narratives may seem fantastical, but when examined alongside archaeological and astronomical evidence, a pattern emerges. Myths as repositories of warning, designed to survive when all else is forgotten. The flood myths are perhaps the most pervasive. From the Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh to the biblical story of Noah, from the Hindu tale of Manu to the flood legends of Mesoamerica, societies separated by geography and culture recount cataclysmic deluges. While skeptics argue these are coincidental or symbolic tales of moral reckoning, many researchers suggest they preserve real historical events. Massive floods caused by rising seas, river overflows, or meteorological extremes. Temples, often constructed near rivers or water sources, may encode these stories into their very foundations, warning future generations through carvings, motifs, and alignment with seasonal water cycles. The recurring depiction of waves, spirals, or serpents in temple carvings may not simply be artistic. They could signify the recurrence of catastrophic floods, a warning encoded in symbol and story alike. Fire and celestial phenomena also dominate ancient mythologies. In cultures across the globe, tales describe fire falling from the heavens, strange red skies, or burning objects descending from the stars. The Aztecs, Mayans, and Incas spoke of fire serpents and celestial destruction. The Egyptians warned of fiery stars and divine retribution. Ancient Chinese texts mention burning comets that foretell disaster. While modern interpretation often labels these as metaphors, the consistency of descriptions across continents, combined with observable evidence of past meteor impacts and comet strikes, suggests that these myths could encode actual astronomical knowledge. Temples, aligned with specific celestial events, may have been constructed to document, observe, and warn about such occurrences, translating myth into enduring stone symbols. Earthquakes and geological upheaval are similarly embedded in myths worldwide. Ancient Greek, Indian, and Japanese stories recount the earth shaking, mountains splitting, or cities collapsing beneath divine or natural forces. Symbols carved into temples, zigzag lines, fractured patterns, or serpentine paths, may reflect an understanding of tectonic activity, passed down for generations who observe patterns over centuries. For civilizations dependent on agriculture and stability, encoding knowledge of earthquakes or landslides would have been not only practical, but vital. By embedding these warnings within sacred architecture, the ancients ensured that crucial survival knowledge would survive long after oral memory faded. In addition to direct warnings, myths often encode cyclical understanding of disaster. Many stories emphasize repetition. The flood returns every cycle, the fire descends when stars align, or the serpent rises from the depths in intervals. Spirals, concentric circles, and recurring geometric patterns in temple carvings often mirror these narrative cycles, providing a visual companion to the oral tradition. This multi-layered encoding, symbol, alignment, and myth allowed ancient societies to preserve knowledge without relying solely on fragile written texts. Even if one medium was lost or misinterpreted, others continued to convey the warning. Interestingly, myths frequently pair disaster with moral or spiritual lessons, yet the underlying practical knowledge cannot be ignored. Tales of hubris, greed, or impiety often accompany stories of floods or fire, suggesting that human action and environmental consequence were intertwined. By embedding practical knowledge within allegory, ancient storytellers ensured the survival of critical observations, while simultaneously offering moral instruction. This approach may have served a dual purpose: to educate and to encode warnings in a culturally resonant form, ensuring that the messages would survive centuries of societal change. Some myths are even location-specific, correlating with known temple sites or natural features. In Mesopotamia, flood legends originate near the Tigris and Euphrates, matching regions prone to seasonal overflow. In Mesoamerica, tales of fire serpents often coincide with volcanic regions, while river deities are invoked in flood-prone areas. The consistency of these narratives with environmental and geological reality suggests that myths were not purely imaginative. They were observational records encoded in a format designed to endure, combining story, symbol, and warning into a cohesive whole. Myths also provide insight into human interpretation of celestial and environmental phenomena. The appearance of comets, unusual planetary alignments, or solar eclipses often inspired stories of God's anger, celestial battles, or cosmic disruption. Ancient architects translated these warnings into temple alignments and symbols, allowing physical structures to serve as both observatories and message centers. Observing a temple at a specific time of year might reveal shadows falling along carvings, echoing mythological events and reminding those present of the recurring cycles of disaster. In this way, myth and architecture were inseparable: story and structure, narrative and stone, working together to communicate enduring knowledge. Finally, the universality of these myths is striking. Despite geographic and cultural separation, flood, fire, earthquake, and celestial disaster motifs appear repeatedly across civilizations. This suggests that either similar catastrophic events were experienced globally or that knowledge of disaster cycles was transmitted through ancient trade, migration, or shared wisdom. Regardless, the convergence strengthens the case that myths are more than simple tales. They are part of a sophisticated system of warning, observation, and knowledge preservation, deeply entwined with the temples and symbols we are beginning to uncover. Through myths, we see that ancient societies were acutely aware of catastrophe, and they sought to preserve that awareness through story, symbol, and architecture. These tales were not idle fiction. They were encoded lessons, warnings, and records of human interaction with cosmic and natural forces. As we continue to examine secret societies, guardians of knowledge, and artifacts designed to convey warning, the patterns revealed in myth provide context, depth, and corroboration, allowing us to read the hidden narrative that ancient civilizations left for us to discover. In essence, myths are not just cultural artifacts. They're pieces of a warning system spanning time and space. They complement symbols, temple alignments, and lost texts, collectively forming a complex network of encoded knowledge about catastrophe. By listening to these stories carefully and connecting them with physical evidence, we begin to understand the depth of awareness ancient civilizations possessed and the urgent relevance of their warnings, still echoing across millennia. Across the ages, the preservation of secret knowledge has often fallen to select groups, hidden from the general populace. Priests, shamans, monks, and initiates assumed the role of guardians, responsible for maintaining the understanding encoded in temples, symbols, and texts. Their mission was not merely religious, but practical, to safeguard knowledge of cycles, celestial alignments, and catastrophes that, if misunderstood or misused, could bring panic or exploitation. These guardians were both protectors and interpreters, ensuring that critical warnings survived the passage of time while remaining accessible only to those trained in the symbolic language of their culture. In Egypt, the temple priesthoods were not merely ceremonial officiants. They were astronomers, mathematicians, and record keepers. They monitored the stars, the Nile's flooding, and solar cycles, integrating this data into rituals and temple architecture. Carvings, hidden chambers, and sacred geometry were their methods of encoding knowledge, preserving warnings about floods, celestial phenomena, or environmental cycles. Many of these priests operated within hierarchies, with advanced knowledge reserved for high-ranking members, ensuring that the most critical information remained secure yet interpretable for future generations. Secret societies were not limited to Egypt. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats were often accessible only to initiates, with symbolic and numerical systems known only to select scribes and priests. Similarly, in Mesoamerica, the Mayan priesthoods controlled astronomical observations, codices, and temple alignments, maintaining the sacred knowledge that connected the heavens to catastrophic events on Earth. These groups were the custodians of predictive wisdom, ensuring that society could prepare for floods, droughts, volcanic activity, and celestial disruptions, if, and only if, the knowledge was applied correctly. Beyond priests and scribes, some orders extended into secret societies that survived well into historical periods. Groups such as the Essenes, Gnostic sects, and later the Templars are rumored to have preserved ancient knowledge, safeguarding texts, artifacts, and temple maps. Their role was not simply to protect physical objects, but to maintain the interpretive framework necessary to understand encoded warnings. Through ritual, instruction, and secrecy, they created continuity between ancient civilizations and later generations, acting as a bridge across time to transmit insights that might otherwise have been lost. The methods of secrecy varied. Some knowledge was preserved orally, passed only to those who had undergone rigorous training. Others relied on physical concealment, chambers hidden behind false walls, manuscripts buried in crypts, or symbols obscured within temple reliefs. Even the very architecture of temples was designed to hide and protect. Hidden passageways, shadowed niches, and inaccessible sanctums ensured that only those with specialized knowledge could uncover the full extent of encoded warnings. The design itself became a safeguard, integrating secrecy into the structure of knowledge transmission. Artifacts also played a key role in the Guardian's mission. Objects such as ceremonial tools, engraved tablets, and coded relics functioned as mnemonic devices, helping the initiated remember, interpret, and transmit the encoded knowledge. Some artifacts, when placed within the temple or aligned with celestial events, revealed critical information at precise times. This combination of material, symbolic, and observational knowledge created a layered system where secrets were embedded in multiple forms, reinforcing the warnings and ensuring they could endure centuries of neglect, misinterpretation, or active suppression. The concept of initiation was central to these societies. Knowledge of catastrophes, celestial cycles, and sacred symbols was considered dangerous in the wrong hands. Initiates were often subjected to rigorous training in mathematics, astronomy, geometry, and symbolic interpretation. Only after years of study could they fully comprehend the encoded warnings. This selective access ensured the survival of critical knowledge while preventing misuse or miscommunication that could endanger society. The process also instilled a reverence for the knowledge, framing it as sacred and essential rather than purely academic. The secrecy of these societies was further reinforced by social and political pressures. Leaders, kings, or ruling elites sometimes sought to suppress or control access to catastrophic knowledge. Revelations of impending disasters could destabilize governments, religious authority, or economic systems. By embedding critical warnings within temples, symbolic systems, and secretive orders, these guardians effectively insulated knowledge from political interference while ensuring it could survive for future interpreters. In essence, secrecy became a survival strategy, preserving both the message and the messenger across centuries. Even in the modern era, traces of these guardian networks remain. Manuscripts discovered in hidden monasteries, secret chambers unearthed beneath ancient ruins, and artifacts preserved in private collections suggest a continuity of knowledge that spans millennia. Some of these discoveries hint at a sophisticated understanding of natural and cosmic cycles, previously dismissed as superstition or coincidence. They also suggest that the ancients were aware of the potential consequences of their warnings being misinterpreted, reinforcing the need for selective transmission through trusted custodians. Ultimately, these guardians ensured that knowledge of catastrophe was preserved, even when civilizations collapsed, empires fell, or texts were destroyed. By combining secrecy, training, and multi-layered encoding through temples, symbols, and artifacts, they created a resilient system of warning. Their work demonstrates that ancient knowledge was not static but dynamic, a living archive, carefully curated to endure and be interpreted only by those capable of understanding its depth. As we continue to explore the artifacts themselves in the next section, it becomes clear that temples, symbols, and secret societies were part of an interconnected network. Each element reinforced the other. Artifacts served as guides, symbols encoded warnings, temples preserved the structure, and guardians ensured the continuity of knowledge. Together, they form a sophisticated system designed to withstand time, loss, and suppression, offering a glimpse into a civilization's foresight and its commitment to alert future generations about the catastrophes that shaped the course of human history. Artifacts are the tangible remnants of civilization's knowledge, the silent witnesses that survive long after temples crumble and manuscripts decay. From engraved tablets to ceremonial objects, these relics provide concrete evidence of how ancient peoples encoded warnings, preserved observations, and maintained continuity of knowledge across generations. Unlike symbolic carvings or oral traditions, artifacts can be handled, measured, and studied, offering a physical link to the intelligence, foresight, and intent of those who crafted them. In the context of hidden warnings, artifacts are often overlooked, dismissed as ritual objects, or misclassified, yet a careful examination reveals layers of meaning that connect them directly to temples, celestial alignments, and myths of catastrophe. Consider the clay tablets of Mesopotamia. Beyond the familiar cuneiform inscriptions, some tablets contain intricate geometric patterns, repeated symbols, and numerical sequences. Mainstream interpretations focus on administration, trade, or genealogy, but a deeper analysis suggests an embedded system of warning. Certain sequences correspond to astronomical events, seasonal cycles, or flood predictions. Others include symbolic motifs, spirals, serpents, and concentric circles that mirror carvings and ziggurats. These tablets served as portable repositories of encoded knowledge, accessible to trained scribes or initiates who could interpret the meaning. In essence, they were manuals for survival, carefully disguised as mundane records to protect the information from misuse. In Egypt, artifacts such as the Dendera zodiac or engraved ceremonial objects offer another perspective on encoded warning. The Dendera relief, often treated as a purely religious or artistic depiction of the heavens, contains precise astronomical information. It maps the positions of constellations, the movements of planets, and celestial cycles, including rare alignments. Some researchers suggest that these astronomical markers correspond to historical cycles of floods, solar anomalies, or periods of societal instability. Ceremonial tools, obelisks, and amulets were also aligned with these celestial observations, functioning as mnemonic devices or guides for initiates to interpret the encoded knowledge correctly. In the Americas, Mayan codices and artifacts perform a similar function. Objects such as carved stele, ceremonial figurines, and inscribed jade pieces often encode astronomical events, environmental cycles, and disaster warnings in a symbolic language. Spirals, serpents, and concentric circles appear repeatedly, often in combination with numeric glyphs. These symbols were not decorative, they were functional. Certain codices, when cross-referenced with temple alignments, reveal precise cycles of eclipses, planetary positions, and even unusual meteorological patterns. The artifacts serve as keys, unlocking the deeper meaning of temple symbols and revealing the predictive systems embedded within ancient architecture. Artifacts also reveal an astonishing level of sophistication in design and purpose. Some ceremonial objects incorporate geometric precision that mirrors temple architecture. For instance, certain Mayan figurines correspond to the angles of pyramid staircases, while Egyptian ritual implements align with solar and lunar phenomena. This integration indicates that artifacts were more than tools for ritual. They were portable extensions of the temple's encoded warning system. By embedding critical knowledge into objects, ancient civilizations created a redundancy that ensured their messages could survive even if the temple itself was destroyed or misinterpreted. Beyond practical encoding, artifacts often contain symbolic storytelling, linking catastrophe with moral or spiritual lessons. Engravings of serpents, waves, celestial bodies, or coiled spirals frequently appear alongside imagery of kings, deities, or ritual participants. These scenes encode cycles of destruction, survival, and renewal, suggesting that the creators of the artifacts intended to convey both warning and instruction. They teach that understanding the cycles of catastrophe requires interpretation within a framework that blends observation, symbolism, and cultural context. The artifacts are therefore multi-layered, preserving knowledge in ways both practical and philosophical. Some artifacts are designed to interact with light, shadow, or specific environmental conditions, revealing hidden information when observed at precise times. In Egypt, obelisks and ceremonial vessels can cast shadows or reflect sunlight to illuminate engraved patterns only at certain solar or lunar positions. In Mesoamerica, figurines or jade objects might align with temple staircases or ritual platforms during equinoxes or solstices. These interactions suggest an advanced understanding of optics, astronomy, and environmental observation, integrating the artifact into a broader system of encoded warning that spans multiple media. The global distribution of similar artifacts also raises intriguing questions about knowledge transmission. Spirals, serpents, concentric circles, and certain geometric motifs appear in cultures separated by thousands of miles, from Mesopotamia to Central America, from Egypt to the Indus Valley. This consistency suggests either shared knowledge, independent but parallel discovery, or ancient networks of communication that are now lost to history. Regardless, the recurrence of these designs indicates that artifacts were not random creations. They were deliberate tools for encoding and preserving critical information about cycles, celestial events, and potential catastrophes. Artifacts also serve as connectors between past and present. When analyzed with modern technology, astronomical software, geospatial mapping, and materials analysis, they reveal patterns that were invisible to previous generations of researchers. For instance, cross-referencing ancient artifacts with known comet appearances, solar anomalies, or tectonic activity can illuminate how ancient peoples tracked catastrophic cycles. Artifacts are therefore not relics of superstition, but sophisticated instruments of observation and warning, designed to transmit knowledge across time. The physicality of artifacts adds a tactile urgency to the encoded message. Holding a carved tablet, a ceremonial vessel, or a jade figurine, one can sense the care, precision, and intent of the creator. Each mark, each curve, each alignment was deliberate, chosen to convey knowledge that survived centuries of human upheaval. In this way, artifacts become more than historical objects. They are conduits of understanding, linking us directly to the minds of those who observed, predicted, and sought to warn about the cycles of catastrophe. Ultimately, artifacts are a vital component of the broader system of warning established by ancient civilizations. They complement temple architecture, symbolic carvings, celestial alignments, and myths, forming a multidimensional archive of knowledge. By examining them closely, we begin to see patterns, understand encoded messages, and appreciate the foresight of civilizations long vanished. The artifacts are silent, yet when interpreted correctly, they speak with startling clarity about cycles of disaster, human resilience, and the enduring wisdom of those who came before us. Throughout history, many discoveries hinting at catastrophic knowledge have been suppressed, dismissed, or deliberately hidden from public view. Mainstream academia, often cautious to avoid controversy, sometimes ignores evidence that challenges conventional narratives. Yet scattered records, overlooked manuscripts, and partially decoded artifacts reveal an alternative story. one in which ancient civilizations encoded warnings about disasters that modern humans remain unprepared to understand. These suppressed discoveries serve as fragments of a vast puzzle, offering glimpses into a knowledge network that spanned continents and millennia, yet remains largely obscured by political, religious, or scholarly gatekeeping. In the 19th and 20th centuries, explorers and archaeologists unearthed temples, manuscripts, and artifacts that suggested advanced knowledge of astronomy, environmental cycles, and catastrophes. Some of these findings were sensationalized. Others were quietly archived, ignored, or misinterpreted to fit orthodox narratives. For example, in Mesopotamia, tablets hinting at pre-flood civilizations and celestial events were often dismissed as mythological exaggeration. In Mesoamerica, codices containing complex astronomical calculations and disaster warnings were sometimes destroyed or concealed by colonizers, either to assert control or suppress indigenous knowledge that challenged their authority. In each case, the suppression of knowledge created gaps, making the warnings encoded in temples, symbols, and artifacts even more crucial to reconstruct. Suppression also occurred within academic institutions. Researchers who proposed alternative interpretations, suggesting that temples or symbols encoded catastrophic knowledge, often faced skepticism, ridicule, or professional marginalization. Some were dismissed for reading too much into myth or accused of overextending the evidence. Yet subsequent analysis of similar patterns across continents often validated their observations, revealing that the warnings encoded by ancient civilizations were both deliberate and consistent. These suppressed discoveries underscore a recurring tension. Knowledge powerful enough to influence societal behavior is often controlled, obscured, or minimized, preserving it only for those willing to look deeper. Modern technology has begun to illuminate previously hidden evidence. High-resolution imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and digital reconstruction have revealed hidden chambers, concealed inscriptions, and intricate temple alignments that were invisible to earlier researchers. For instance, shadow patterns and light alignments within temples become apparent only with precise measurement tools. Likewise, digitally mapping ancient artifacts can uncover repeated motifs and numeric sequences that were previously unnoticed. These technologies allow researchers to reinterpret suppressed evidence, giving voice to warnings that have lain dormant for centuries. Suppressed discoveries are not limited to ancient artifacts. They extend into lost manuscripts and forgotten texts. Some manuscripts were deliberately hidden in monasteries, private collections, or underground vaults, their contents only accessible to a select few. Others were destroyed due to political, religious, or social pressures, leaving gaps in the historical record. The consequences of such suppression are profound. Humanity loses continuity of knowledge, and warnings about cycles of disaster remain obscured until rediscovered and properly interpreted. These gaps create a disjointed understanding of history, one in which catastrophes are perceived as random or isolated rather than as part of repeating cycles recognized by ancient observers. The implications of suppressed discoveries extend into modern times. If ancient civilizations encoded warnings about environmental, geological, or cosmic cycles, failure to recognize these messages could leave humanity vulnerable to the same forces they observed. Rising sea levels, shifting tectonic plates, and extreme weather patterns may echo events encoded in temples, artifacts, and myths millennia ago. Ignoring suppressed knowledge risks repeating past mistakes, underscoring the importance of revisiting ancient evidence with both skepticism and openness to alternative interpretations. Secret societies, both ancient and medieval, played a role in the selective preservation and suppression of knowledge. Orders such as the Essenes, Gnostic sects, or the Knights Templar often safeguarded manuscripts, relics, and encoded warnings, preserving knowledge that might have otherwise been lost. Their secrecy ensured that the most critical information survived, while limiting access to those prepared to interpret it correctly. In many ways, suppression was a protective measure, designed to prevent widespread panic or misuse while preserving essential insights for future generations capable of understanding their meaning. The recurring theme of suppression highlights a conflict between power and knowledge. Governments, religious authorities, and societal institutions often controlled what knowledge could be shared publicly, particularly when it pertained to catastrophic cycles or environmental upheaval. While suppression may have served short-term stability, it also created a veil of ignorance over information that ancient civilizations had painstakingly encoded in temples, symbols, and artifacts. As modern researchers piece together the fragmented evidence, these suppressed discoveries challenge conventional narratives, revealing an underlying network of encoded warnings that may still hold relevance today. Interestingly, the rediscovery of suppressed knowledge often sparks controversy. When previously ignored or hidden evidence emerges, such as obscure inscriptions, forgotten codices, or newly interpreted artifacts, it frequently challenges long-held assumptions. This tension between orthodox scholarship and alternative perspectives underscores the conspiratorial nature of ancient knowledge. Powerful information, carefully encoded for survival, may have been deliberately restricted to prevent misuse, leaving modern humans to reconstruct meaning from fragments. By examining suppressed discoveries alongside temple architecture, symbolic motifs, artifacts, and myths, a more comprehensive understanding emerges. Ancient civilizations were acutely aware of cycles of catastrophe, and their warnings were deliberately encoded in multiple forms, each reinforcing the other. The suppression of knowledge and history has obscured this system, yet careful analysis reveals a persistent network of encoded warnings, waiting for those who could decipher their meaning. These discoveries remind us that history is not only recorded in text, but in stone, symbol, and shadow, and that understanding the past may be essential to navigating the future. Ultimately, suppressed discoveries serve as both cautionary tales and keys. They remind us of what humanity has forgotten and what may yet be relevant today. By reconnecting with lost knowledge, reinterpreting hidden artifacts, and decoding temple alignments, we gain access to a sophisticated system of warnings crafted millennia ago. The challenge lies not only in discovery, but in interpretation, bridging the gap between ancient foresight and modern understanding, ensuring that the encoded wisdom of our ancestors is not lost again. Prophecies have always fascinated humanity, serving as bridges between the known and the unknowable, between observation and intuition. Across civilizations, oracles, seers, and sages recorded predictions that, at first glance, seem mystical or allegorical. Yet, when examined in the context of temple symbols, celestial alignments, and ancient artifacts, these prophecies reveal a remarkable consistency. They often align with cycles of natural or cosmic catastrophe. In essence, prophecies may not have been mere speculation or spiritual guidance. They were codified warnings embedded in myth, architecture, and symbol, designed to endure across generations. In ancient Mesopotamia, prophecies recorded by pre-scribes often included references to celestial phenomena and environmental disruption. Tablets describe floods, planetary conjunctions, and fiery skies as omens of societal upheaval. While traditional scholarship treats these as moral allegories or mystical pronouncements, correlations between recorded events and archaeological evidence suggest they may have been based on empirical observation of environmental and astronomical cycles. The predictive nature of these prophecies, when combined with temple carvings or artifacts, points to a sophisticated understanding of patterns that could be interpreted to anticipate disasters. Egyptian prophecies, inscribed on temple walls or preserved in sacred texts, frequently describe celestial omens signaling changes on Earth. Unusual comets, eclipses, and solar anomalies are often linked with floods, famine, or political upheaval. These prophecies were not random. They were meticulously recorded by priest astronomers who observed correlations over centuries. Temple architecture reinforced these warnings, with light and shadow highlighting prophetic symbols at specific times of year. The combination of written prophecy and physical encoding suggests that ancient Egyptians sought to create a fail-safe system, ensuring that vital knowledge about potential catastrophes would endure beyond the lifespan of any individual or dynasty. Mesoamerican prophecies, particularly those of the Maya, further illustrate this integration. The Mayans produced extensive calendrical and astronomical records that include references to cycles of destruction and renewal. Many of these prophecies correspond to rare celestial events, such as Venus transits, eclipses, or solar alignments, and are encoded into temple geometry and artifact symbolism. Spirals, serpent motifs, and numeric glyphs in temples and codices often highlight the timing and nature of these events. The predictive framework within Mayan prophecies reflects a sophisticated system of observation, calculation, and cultural encoding, merging myth with practical foresight. Prophecies were not merely theoretical. They were closely tied to human action. In many cultures, specific rituals or observances were required to mitigate the predicted catastrophe, linking prophecy, observation, and practical response. Temples acted as both sacred sites and centers of knowledge, where encoded symbols and artifact placement guided the interpretation of prophecy. The integration of prophecy into daily life underscores the functional purpose of these warnings. They were meant to be understood, observed, and acted upon by those trained to do so. In this sense, prophecy was a form of applied knowledge, bridging spirituality, observation, and survival strategy. The interplay between prophecy and temple symbols is particularly revealing. Certain symbols, such as spirals or serpents, often correspond to prophetic warnings of cyclical catastrophe. Concentric circles might encode time intervals, numerical sequences indicate cycles, and serpentine figures could represent celestial bodies or destructive forces. When examined alongside artifacts aligned with celestial events, a complex system emerges in which prophecy, symbol, and material culture function as a cohesive network, capable of transmitting knowledge across centuries. These encoded warnings were layered deliberately, ensuring redundancy and enhancing the chances that the message would survive cultural, political, or environmental upheaval. Interestingly, prophecies often include both caution and guidance. They warn of destructive forces, yet provide pathways to understanding, preparation, or survival. This duality reflects the ancients' awareness of human limitations and the necessity of careful interpretation. By encoding prophecies into symbols and temples, they ensured that only those with the requisite knowledge and training could fully comprehend the warnings, avoiding panic while preserving critical insight. In this way, prophecy functioned as both shield and beacon, a protective and instructive tool for navigating cycles of catastrophe. Cross-cultural examination reveals surprising similarities in prophetic themes. Floods, fire from the heavens, celestial anomalies, and cycles of destruction appear repeatedly, regardless of geography or cultural context. This convergence suggests either a shared ancestral knowledge, parallel observation of natural phenomena, or long-distance communication networks now lost to history. Regardless of the mechanism, the recurrence strengthens the argument that prophecy was not mere superstition but a deliberate attempt to encode observational knowledge of cycles, disasters, and cosmic patterns. The connection between prophecy and hidden knowledge also underscores the role of secrecy. Many prophecies were accessible only to initiates, recorded in cryptic symbols, or preserved in restricted texts. This ensured that the wisdom could survive without causing widespread panic or being misinterpreted by those unprepared to comprehend its meaning. Secrecy also reinforced the authority of temple custodians, priests, or secret societies, who were entrusted with both the interpretation and preservation of prophetic insight. In this context, prophecy was both a warning and a responsibility, a charge entrusted to select guardians across generations. Modern researchers are beginning to recognize the predictive power encoded in these ancient prophecies. By cross-referencing temple symbols, artifact motifs, and celestial alignments, it is possible to see patterns that correlate with historical cycles of environmental and cosmic catastrophe. While skepticism remains, the evidence suggests that prophecy functioned not only as spiritual guidance, but as a sophisticated observational system, allowing ancient civilizations to anticipate and encode warnings of natural and cosmic cycles. Ultimately, the study of prophecy in relation to temple symbols reveals a civilization-wide awareness of cyclical disaster, a continuity of observation, and a sophisticated system of encoded warning. Prophecies were not idle speculation. They were carefully preserved knowledge, encoded in architecture, artifacts, and symbolic language, intended to guide future generations. As we continue exploring these patterns, the connection between prophecy, symbol, and catastrophe becomes increasingly clear. Ancient civilizations were far more attuned to the rhythms of the universe than modern humanity often gives them credit for. Prophecies, when viewed alongside artifacts, temple alignments, and myths, form a unified narrative of warning and guidance. They demonstrate the ancients' intent to communicate across time, preserving knowledge of potential catastrophe while guiding human action. By decoding these prophecies, we gain not only insight into historical patterns, but also a deeper appreciation of the sophistication, foresight, and urgency embedded in the architecture, symbols, and artifacts that have survived for millennia. Celestial anomalies have long captivated human imagination, inspiring awe, fear, and careful observation. Ancient civilizations meticulously recorded unusual events in the sky. Comets blazing across the heavens, supernovae flaring in distant constellations, solar and lunar eclipses, and rare planetary alignments. To modern eyes, these occurrences may seem episodic or decorative, but for the ancients, they were critical signals, often interpreted as harbingers of disaster or markers of cyclical change. Temples, artifacts, and mythologies frequently encode these anomalies, suggesting that unusual celestial phenomena were carefully observed, calculated, and integrated into systems of warning. Comets, in particular, were regarded with apprehension. Across cultures, they were associated with fire, destruction, and divine retribution. Babylonian tablets describe comets as fiery serpents or omens of upheaval, often coinciding with floods, wars, or dynastic collapse. Similarly, Egyptian texts refer to stars that fall like flames, interpreted as signs of celestial judgment. In Mesoamerica, codices depict fiery objects descending from the sky, sometimes in alignment with temple constructions. These repeated depictions suggest that comets were not merely aesthetic motifs. They were observed anomalies with profound significance, encoded into myths, artifacts, and sacred architecture. Eclipses, both solar and lunar, provided another layer of celestial warning. The temporary darkening of the sun or moon was universally regarded as a portent, often coinciding with societal or environmental crises. Ancient astronomers meticulously recorded these events, and temple alignments sometimes allowed priests or initiates to track and predict them. By encoding eclipses into symbols or architectural features, civilizations created durable markers for future generations, linking celestial disruption to terrestrial consequences. The interplay between observation, calculation, and symbolic representation demonstrates an advanced understanding of astronomy and its practical implications. Planetary alignments were also significant. Rare configurations of Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn were noted across multiple civilizations, often associated with floods, famine, or societal upheaval. In Mesopotamia, texts record planetary conjunctions as signals for major events, while in Mesoamerica, alignments correspond to temple design and ritual calendars. Such alignments were not daily occurrences. Their rarity amplified their importance, marking critical windows of observation and action. Temples and artifacts were designed to capture these events visually or symbolically, creating enduring records of the ancients' predictive systems. Supernovae and other unusual stellar events left their imprint as well. Records from China, Babylon, and Egypt describe guest stars appearing suddenly in the sky, often accompanied by interpretation of disaster or social change. Temples, ceremonial artifacts, and myths frequently embed representations of these events, creating a multi-layered warning system. Spirals, radiant circles, or star-like carvings in temples may correspond to these anomalies, reinforcing the message encoded in oral tradition and manuscript records. In some cases, these anomalies may have coincided with real environmental events, such as volcanic eruptions or extreme weather, providing the ancients with a tangible link between the heavens and catastrophic consequences on Earth. The integration of celestial anomalies with temple symbolism was deliberate. Certain carvings align precisely with rising stars or planetary conjunctions at specific times of year, allowing initiates to observe the manifestation of encoded knowledge. Shadow and light interplay across reliefs, illuminating spirals, serpents, or geometric motifs in patterns that correlate with celestial phenomena. This precise interaction suggests an intentional system in which observation of the sky activates encoded warnings, translating cosmic events into terrestrial understanding. Artifacts played a complementary role in recording celestial anomalies. Engraved tablets, ceremonial tools, and figurines often encode numeric sequences, geometric patterns, or symbolic representations of anomalous events. By cross-referencing these artifacts with temple alignments, it becomes possible to reconstruct ancient observational systems and the warnings they contain. This redundancy ensured that even if one medium was lost, whether through destruction, decay, or suppression, others could continue to transmit critical knowledge to future generations. Interestingly, many anomalies are encoded cyclically. Comet appearances, eclipses, and planetary alignments often follow predictable intervals, and the ancients recognized this repetition. Spirals, concentric circles, and repeating symbols in temples may reflect these cycles, visually encoding temporal knowledge alongside myth and prophecy. By integrating observation, symbol, and architecture, ancient civilizations created a durable system capable of transmitting warnings long after direct memory or textual evidence had faded. The cultural interpretation of celestial anomalies also reinforces their significance. Across civilizations, unusual sky events are linked with catastrophe, social change, or divine intervention. The consistency of these interpretations across continents and epochs suggests that the ancients were observing real phenomena with significant impact, rather than constructing purely allegorical narratives. Temples, symbols, and artifacts collectively serve as a historical record of these anomalies, encoding both observation and guidance in ways that are only fully decipherable when the system is considered in its entirety. Modern research into celestial anomalies provides a surprising degree of corroboration. High-precision astronomical modeling allows us to recreate past skies, verifying the accuracy of ancient records and their predictive power. When combined with temple alignments, symbolic motifs, and artifacts, we can see that ancient civilizations anticipated rare events with remarkable precision. This reinforces the notion that encoded warnings were not coincidental. They were the product of careful observation, calculation, and deliberate encoding into multiple layers of cultural and material expression. Ultimately, celestial anomalies were far more than dramatic spectacles. They were instruments of warning and knowledge. Temples, artifacts, and myths transformed these events into enduring messages, creating a sophisticated system for communicating potential catastrophe. By decoding these patterns, we begin to understand how ancient civilizations combined observation, symbolism, and foresight to preserve knowledge across millennia. Their work reveals a deep awareness of the forces shaping our world, and the careful transmission of this knowledge underscores a central theme. The ancients sought not only to record the heavens, but to use that knowledge to guide and protect future generations. Celestial anomalies have long captivated human imagination, inspiring awe, fear, and careful observation. Ancient civilizations meticulously recorded unusual events in the sky. Comets blazing across the heavens, supernovae flaring in distant constellations, solar and lunar eclipses, and rare planetary alignments. To modern eyes, these occurrences may seem episodic or decorative, but for the ancients, they were critical signals, often interpreted as harbingers of disaster or markers of cyclical change. Temples, artifacts, and mythologies frequently encode these anomalies, suggesting that unusual celestial phenomena were carefully observed, calculated, and integrated into systems of warning. Comets, in particular, were regarded with apprehension. Across cultures, they were associated with fire, destruction, and divine retribution. Babylonian tablets describe comets as fiery serpents or omens of upheaval, often coinciding with floods, wars, or dynastic collapse. Similarly, Egyptian texts refer to stars that fall like flames, interpreted as signs of celestial judgment. In Mesoamerica, codices depict fiery objects descending from the sky, sometimes in alignment with temple constructions. These repeated depictions suggest that comets were not merely aesthetic motifs. They were observed anomalies with profound significance, encoded into myths, artifacts, and sacred architecture. Eclipses, both solar and lunar, provided another layer of celestial warning. The temporary darkening of the sun or moon was universally regarded as a portent, often coinciding with societal or environmental crises. Ancient astronomers meticulously recorded these events, and temple alignments sometimes allowed priests or initiates to track and predict them. By encoding eclipses into symbols or architectural features, civilizations created durable markers for future generations, linking celestial disruption to terrestrial consequences. The interplay between observation, calculation, and symbolic representation demonstrates an advanced understanding of astronomy and its practical implications. Planetary alignments were also significant. Rare configurations of Venus, Mars, Jupiter, or Saturn were noted across multiple civilizations, often associated with floods, famine, or societal upheaval. In Mesopotamia, texts record planetary conjunctions as signals for major events, while in Mesoamerica, alignments correspond to temple design and ritual calendars. Such alignments were not daily occurrences. Their rarity amplified their importance, marking critical windows of observation and action. Temples and artifacts were designed to capture these events visually or symbolically, creating enduring records of the ancients' predictive systems. Supernovae and other unusual stellar events left their imprint as well. Records from China, Babylon, and Egypt describe guest stars appearing suddenly in the sky, often accompanied by interpretation of disaster or social change. Temples, ceremonial artifacts, and myths frequently embed representations of these events, creating a multi-layered warning system. Spirals, radiant circles, or star-like carvings in temples may correspond to these anomalies, reinforcing the message encoded in oral tradition and manuscript records. In some cases, these anomalies may have coincided with real environmental events, such as volcanic eruptions or extreme weather, providing the ancients with a tangible link between the heavens and catastrophic consequences on Earth. The integration of celestial anomalies with temple symbolism was deliberate. Certain carvings align precisely with rising stars or planetary conjunctions at specific times of year, allowing initiates to observe the manifestation of encoded knowledge. Shadow and light interplay across reliefs, illuminating spirals, serpents, or geometric motifs in patterns that correlate with celestial phenomena. This precise interaction suggests an intentional system in which observation of the sky activates encoded warnings, translating cosmic events into terrestrial understanding. Artifacts played a complementary role in recording celestial anomalies. Engraved tablets, ceremonial tools, and figurines often encode numeric sequences, geometric patterns, or symbolic representations of anomalous events. By cross-referencing these artifacts with temple alignments, it becomes possible to reconstruct ancient observational systems and the warnings they contain. This redundancy ensured that even if one medium was lost, whether through destruction, decay, or suppression, Others could continue to transmit critical knowledge to future generations. Interestingly, many anomalies are encoded cyclically. Comet appearances, eclipses, and planetary alignments often follow predictable intervals, and the ancients recognized this repetition. Spirals, concentric circles, and repeating symbols in temples may reflect these cycles, visually encoding temporal knowledge alongside myth and prophecy. By integrating observation, symbol, and architecture, ancient civilizations created a durable system capable of transmitting warnings long after direct memory or textual evidence had faded. The cultural interpretation of celestial anomalies also reinforces their significance. Across civilizations, unusual sky events are linked with catastrophe, social change, or divine intervention. The consistency of these interpretations across continents and epochs suggests that the ancients were observing real phenomena with significant impact, rather than constructing purely allegorical narratives. Temples, symbols, and artifacts collectively serve as a historical record of these anomalies, encoding both observation and guidance in ways that are only fully decipherable when the system is considered in its entirety. Modern research into celestial anomalies provides a surprising degree of corroboration. High-precision astronomical modeling allows us to recreate past skies, verifying the accuracy of ancient records and their predictive power. When combined with temple alignments, symbolic motifs, and artifacts, we can see that ancient civilizations anticipated rare events with remarkable precision. This reinforces the notion that encoded warnings were not coincidental. They were the product of careful observation, calculation, and deliberate encoding into multiple layers of cultural and material expression. Ultimately, celestial anomalies were far more than dramatic spectacles. They were instruments of warning and knowledge. Temples, artifacts, and myths transformed these events into enduring messages, creating a sophisticated system for communicating potential catastrophe. By decoding these patterns, we begin to understand how ancient civilizations combined observation, symbolism, and foresight to preserve knowledge across millennia. Their work reveals a deep awareness of the forces shaping our world, and the careful transmission of this knowledge underscores a central theme. The ancients sought not only to record the heavens, but to use that knowledge to guide and protect future generations.
Myths, symbols, and catastrophic cycles are intricately intertwined, forming a web of knowledge that transcends time and geography. Across ancient civilizations, stories of floods, fire, earthquakes, and celestial disturbances were never isolated tales. They were deeply connected to symbolic systems embedded in temples, artifacts, and ritual practices. Symbols acted as shorthand, encoding complex cycles of disaster, survival strategies, and environmental observation into visual language. Myths gave these symbols narrative context, transforming abstract warnings into memorable, interpretable lessons, ensuring that knowledge endured through generations even as societies changed. Flood myths, for example, are found worldwide, from the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to Mesoamerican codices and Hindu legends. While each story varies culturally, the underlying theme of cyclical inundation remains consistent. Symbols accompanying these myths, spirals, wavy lines, or serpent motifs, often appear in temple carvings, ritual artifacts, and ceremonial tools. The repetition of these symbols across contexts and continents suggests a deliberate encoding of flood cycles, allowing civilizations to link observed natural patterns with narrative warnings. Myths thus became mnemonic devices, providing structure and meaning to visual symbols that could otherwise be easily overlooked. Fire and celestial disasters follow a similar pattern. Comets, meteors, and solar anomalies are represented as serpents, fiery streaks, or radiant circles in temple carvings and artifacts. Myths describe these phenomena in allegorical terms, narrating celestial battles, divine wrath, or cosmic judgment. The combination of myth and symbol allows for layered interpretation. The story communicates moral or cultural lessons, while the accompanying symbol encodes observational knowledge, enabling future generations to recognize patterns and prepare for rare but catastrophic events. In this way, myths and symbols together act as a multidimensional language of warning. Earthquakes and geological upheavals are also encoded in symbols and myths. Zigzag lines, fractured geometric patterns, and coil forms appear in temple reliefs and artifacts, corresponding to tectonic activity or unstable landscapes. Legends describing the earth opening, mountains collapsing, or cities sinking provide narrative context for these symbols, transforming abstract warnings into stories that can be interpreted and remembered. Across cultures, from Greece to Japan, from Egypt to the Americas, these myths reinforce a cyclical understanding of catastrophe, ensuring that even societies separated by continents maintain continuity in encoded knowledge. The cyclical nature of disaster is a recurring theme in both myths and symbols. Many stories emphasize repetition. Floods return in intervals, fire descends during rare celestial alignments, or serpents rise from the depths at set cycles. Temple carvings, spirals, and concentric circles often visually mirror these cycles, providing a tangible representation of the narrative. By embedding cyclical knowledge in both myth and symbol, ancient civilizations created redundancy in their warning system. If one form of knowledge was lost, another could still convey critical information. This multi-layered encoding demonstrates sophisticated foresight and an understanding of both human memory and environmental patterns. Myths also encode instruction alongside warning. Tales of catastrophe often include guidance on survival, ritual observance, or behavioral conduct that could mitigate the impact of predicted disasters. Symbols reinforce this guidance, encoding steps, timing, or observatory methods to interpret cosmic and environmental cycles. For instance, serpent motifs might indicate celestial objects or environmental events to watch, while spiral symbols may encode the timing of recurrence. Together, myths and symbols form a comprehensive system in which observation, narrative, and instruction are inseparable, offering both warning and preparation. Artifacts serve as a physical anchor for these myths and symbols, linking the abstract narrative to tangible objects. Carved tablets, ceremonial tools, and figurines preserve symbolic motifs that echo temple alignments and narrative cycles. For example, a Mayan jade figurine depicting a coiled serpent may correspond to both a mythological event and a real planetary alignment, providing a coded guide for observation. Similarly, Egyptian ceremonial vessels often bear symbols that, when interpreted correctly, reveal cyclical patterns of flood or celestial phenomena. Artifacts act as durable carriers of this multi-layered knowledge, allowing myths and symbols to remain relevant long after oral tradition fades. The universality of these patterns is striking. Across continents, cultures, and epochs, the same motifs recur. Spirals, serpents, concentric circles, and zigzag lines appear in Mesoamerica, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. Floods, fire, celestial anomalies, and earthquakes dominate myths. This consistency suggests either shared ancestral knowledge, parallel observation of natural phenomena, or long-distance transmission of information, possibly via trade, migration, or even lost civilizations whose influence spanned continents. Regardless of origin, the repetition reinforces the credibility and intentionality of the system. Ancient societies were deliberately encoding critical knowledge about catastrophic cycles. Furthermore, the integration of myths, symbols, and cycles highlights the ancients' awareness of timing and rarity. Not every flood, fire, or celestial anomaly warranted encoding. The focus was on events of magnitude or periodic recurrence that could affect society on a large scale. By selecting which events to encode, civilizations create a priority system, emphasizing the most significant dangers and ensuring that warnings remain clear and interpretable. Myth, symbol, and artifact function as filters, distilling complex environmental and cosmic observations into accessible, enduring forms. Finally, this interconnection between myths, symbols, and catastrophe underscores the sophistication of ancient knowledge systems. Far from being mere superstition, these networks of encoded information reveal careful observation, mathematical understanding, and cultural ingenuity. Myths provided narrative structure, symbols delivered precision, and artifacts offered permanence. Together, they form a comprehensive system of warning, guidance, and cyclical understanding that survives millennia, waiting to be interpreted by those capable of decoding its layered messages. Through this lens, we can see that ancient civilizations were not passive observers of nature. They were active chroniclers, engineers, and communicators, encoding critical knowledge of disaster cycles into every layer of culture. Myths, symbols, and artifacts work in concert to preserve warnings, ensuring that the lessons learned by one generation could guide many more. By decoding this intricate system, modern humanity gains not only historical insight, but also potentially life-saving knowledge about the forces that shape our world.
Temples were more than places of worship. They were complex observatories, archives, and warning systems designed to encode environmental and societal cycles in stone, symbol, and alignment. Across ancient civilizations, temple architecture reflects a deep understanding of the rhythms of nature, seasonal floods, agricultural cycles, celestial movements, and societal shifts. Every pillar, relief, and corridor could serve as a record or guide, providing insight into patterns that could influence survival and prosperity. By embedding knowledge of these cycles into sacred spaces, civilizations ensured that critical information would endure, accessible only to those trained to interpret its meaning. Flood cycles were particularly central to temple design. In Mesopotamia, temples and ziggurats were constructed near rivers prone to seasonal inundation. Reliefs and carvings often depict serpentine lines, waves, and coiled forms, symbols interpreted as visual representations of water and its destructive potential. By observing the temple at specific times, such as solstices or equinoxes, priests could track river levels, predict floods, and coordinate rituals or communal preparations. The temple thus became both a spiritual center and a practical observatory, translating environmental knowledge into durable symbols and ceremonial practices. Agricultural and seasonal cycles were encoded with similar precision. Temples across Egypt, Mesoamerica, and India were aligned to solar events such as solstices, equinoxes, or heliacal risings of specific stars. Sunlight would illuminate particular carvings or niches at precise times, signaling planting or harvest periods, as well as periods of environmental risk. These alignments were often reinforced by artifacts, ceremonial tools, or inscribed markers that echoed the timing encoded in architecture. By combining observation, structure, and symbolism, temples preserved knowledge essential for societal survival, bridging the gap between natural cycles and human activity. Societal cycles were also subtly encoded within temple spaces. Inscriptions, carvings, and spatial design often reflect the rise and fall of dynasties, periods of political instability, or shifts in population and resource availability. By linking environmental cycles with societal patterns, temples offered a comprehensive understanding of cause and effect, reinforcing the ancient awareness that human actions and natural events were intertwined. These insights were often reserved for initiates or priestly classes, ensuring that knowledge was transmitted responsibly and interpreted correctly. Celestial cycles were intricately integrated into temple architecture as well. Alignments with planets, stars, and lunar phases ensured that temples functioned as observatories capable of predicting rare events, such as eclipses or planetary conjunctions, which could signal environmental disruptions or societal stress. Carvings of serpents, spirals, and geometric motifs often corresponded to these celestial events, providing a visual shorthand for complex astronomical knowledge. By observing the temple in concert with celestial phenomena, the ancients encoded a sophisticated system of predictive insight, allowing them to anticipate and respond to cycles of disaster or renewal. Artifacts and temple symbols worked in tandem to reinforce these encoded cycles. Tablets, figurines, and ritual objects mirrored the carvings and alignments found within the temple, creating redundancy that ensured continuity of knowledge even if the physical structure was damaged. For instance, a spiral motif on a ceremonial object could correspond to a carved relief illuminated at a particular solar alignment, encoding the timing of floods, droughts, or celestial events. This multi-layered system allowed knowledge to survive both the passage of time and the suppression of records or texts. The symbolism within temples often emphasized repetition, reflecting the cyclical nature of environmental and societal phenomena. Concentric circles, coiled serpents, and repeated geometric patterns appear throughout ancient sites, visually representing intervals of recurrence, warning, or opportunity. By encoding cycles in a visual and spatial medium, civilizations created a language of recurrence, ensuring that initiates could interpret both timing and magnitude of natural or societal events. The temple thus became a living map of patterns, a three-dimensional archive where myth, symbol, and observation converged. Ritual practices within temples often served to reinforce these cycles. Ceremonies, offerings, and seasonal festivals were not merely spiritual observances. They acted as reminders and calibrations, aligning human activity with environmental and cosmic rhythms. Through ritual, knowledge encoded in architecture and artifacts was activated, interpreted, and passed to successive generations. This interplay between space, symbol, and practice highlights the integrative sophistication of temple design. Temples were both practical tools and spiritual anchors, preserving essential knowledge through observation, participation, and interpretation. The universality of this temple-based encoding is striking. From Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, Egypt to India, architectural precision, symbolic redundancy, and ritual integration appear consistently. Despite geographic separation, civilizations independently developed similar systems for encoding environmental and societal cycles, reflecting a shared understanding of the importance of observation, prediction, and preservation. This convergence suggests that ancient cultures possessed an advanced awareness of the interplay between human society and natural cycles, encoding that awareness in a durable, multidimensional system. Ultimately, temples serve as enduring records of ancient knowledge, preserving cycles that governed both nature and society. By encoding environmental patterns, celestial events, and societal rhythms into architecture, symbol, and ritual, civilizations created sophisticated systems capable of transmitting warning and guidance across generations. These sacred spaces were more than religious centers. They were archives, observatories, and communication networks, designed to ensure the continuity of knowledge in the face of disaster, decay, and suppression. Understanding the encoded cycles within temples provides modern researchers with a profound insight into how ancient peoples observed, interpreted, and planned for the rhythms of the world around them. Hidden maps and geographical clues encoded in temples represent one of the most remarkable aspects of ancient knowledge systems. These sacred structures were not merely centers of worship. They were living archives designed to preserve practical and spiritual knowledge across generations. Across civilizations, temple layouts, carvings, and alignments often mirror rivers, mountains, coastlines, and other critical geographic features. This suggests that the ancients intended temples to function simultaneously as observatories, ritual spaces, and navigational tools, embedding essential information about the world in ways that were durable, symbolic, and intentionally cryptic. In Egypt, temple reliefs frequently reflect the surrounding landscape, providing encoded information about rivers, deserts, and strategic locations. The Nile, a lifeline of the civilization, was often depicted in carvings and frescoes as a serpentine line, symbolizing both its physical flow and its cyclical floods. Certain temple corridors were oriented to capture the sun's light at specific times of year, illuminating carvings that corresponded to the river's seasonal patterns. Priests trained in these systems could read the temple as both a sacred space and a practical environmental guide, understanding when floods would occur, where fertile lands lay, and how to align agricultural activity with natural cycles. The physical layout of the temple thus acted as a three-dimensional map, encoding environmental knowledge into architectural design. Mesopotamian ziggurats and temples also incorporated environmental and geographic awareness. Oriented in relation to rivers, valleys, and trade routes, these structures encoded information about safe settlement zones, floodplains, and resource distribution. Reliefs and inscriptions depicted stylized representations of rivers, mountains, and plains, forming symbolic maps readable by trained priests or scribes. The orientation and positioning of staircases, walls, and terraces often corresponded to cardinal directions or natural features, creating a practical guide for movement, planning, and ritual timing. These hidden maps demonstrate an extraordinary awareness of how human settlements were intertwined with their geographic and environmental context, encoding this knowledge in ways that could survive political turmoil or societal collapse. Mesoamerican temples, particularly in the Maya and Aztec civilizations, reveal even more sophisticated use of geography in sacred architecture. Sites like Teotihuacan, Chichen Itza, and Tikal display alignments that correspond not only to solar, lunar, or planetary events, but also to surrounding topography. Mountain peaks, rivers, and valleys are referenced directly or symbolically in the temple's layout, staircases, and niches. Certain carvings appear to encode the location of water sources, volcanic formations, or flood-prone areas. These elements were deliberately integrated into the architecture, creating a system in which sacred space doubled as a geographic map. Temples, in this sense, were functional tools. They preserved knowledge critical to survival, trade, and strategic planning. Artifacts complement the encoded geographic knowledge within temples. Carved tablets, ceremonial objects, and figurines often contain symbolic depictions of rivers, mountains, coastlines, or celestial paths. Some carry numeric or geometric codes corresponding to distances, elevations, or timing of seasonal changes. For instance, a Mayan jade figurine depicting a coiled serpent may encode a river's course, flood cycles, or celestial alignments, effectively serving as a portable map. When interpreted alongside temple architecture, these artifacts create a multi-layered system that integrates geography, celestial observation, environmental cycles, and human activity. Knowledge was thus preserved redundantly, allowing it to survive even if a temple was destroyed or text lost. Some temple symbols were intentionally cryptic, designed to conceal their meaning from uninitiated observers. Spiral motifs, zigzag lines, and coiled serpent imagery often encoded danger zones, such as floodplains, unstable terrain, or volcanic areas. These symbolic warnings were placed strategically in sacred spaces, accessible only to those trained to interpret them. In this way, temples functioned as both educational and protective instruments, teaching initiates about the landscape's hidden risks while preventing casual observers from misinterpreting critical survival information. This intentional concealment highlights the careful balance between secrecy and utility that ancient civilizations maintained in their architectural designs. The integration of celestial observation and geographic encoding adds another layer of sophistication. Certain temples were aligned with stars, planets, or solstices to indicate precise locations or environmental cycles. By observing sunlight or shadow at specific times, initiates could interpret encoded maps, predict seasonal changes, or track water sources. Temple design often mirrored the surrounding topography, with stairways, terraces, and niches functioning as pointers or markers corresponding to natural features. This interplay between celestial alignment and geographic mapping demonstrates a comprehensive understanding of both the heavens and the earth, allowing civilizations to anticipate cycles of disaster and opportunity simultaneously. Mythology also intersects with encoded maps. Rivers, mountains, valleys, and celestial pathways depicted in myths often correspond to actual geographic features, reinforcing practical knowledge within a symbolic narrative framework. Stories of floods, journeys, or divine intervention can be read as mnemonic devices for understanding the landscape and its hazards. Myths thus function alongside symbols and temple architecture to create a multidimensional map. Narrative, visual, and spatial knowledge converge to encode survival strategies, environmental awareness, and practical navigation techniques. Beyond local geography, some temples encode knowledge of broader regional or even intercontinental networks. Certain alignments or repeated motifs appear in distant sites, suggesting the transfer of geographic knowledge across cultures. Spirals, concentric circles, or serpent motifs may act as references to rivers, mountain ranges, or trade routes beyond the immediate temple location. This indicates that ancient civilizations not only encoded local environmental knowledge, but also developed a conceptual framework for regional observation, enabling communication, coordination, and preservation of critical geographic intelligence over vast distances. The redundancy and layering of these geographic encodings ensured knowledge resilience. Temples, artifacts, myths, and ritual practices all contained overlapping information about terrain, hazards, and environmental cycles. Even if one medium failed, through destruction, decay, or suppression, others preserved the critical knowledge. This system reflects a sophisticated awareness of the fragility of human institutions and memory, and a deliberate effort to create a durable, multi-generational warning system. Ultimately, hidden maps and geographic encoding in temples reveal a civilization's ability to observe, understand, and communicate the physical world in intricate and enduring ways. Temples were not mere religious monuments. They were functional archives, observatories, and teaching tools, integrating local and regional geography, environmental awareness, celestial observation, and symbolic language. Artifacts and myths complemented the architecture, creating a redundant, resilient system of encoded knowledge. By decoding these hidden maps, modern researchers can gain insight not only into ancient geography, but also into the broader intelligence, foresight, and survival strategies of the civilizations that created them. The implications are profound. Ancient temples were deliberately designed to guide, warn, and instruct generations, encoding spatial, environmental, and cosmic knowledge in a physical, symbolic, and narrative forms. Hidden maps within these sacred spaces illuminate the depth of ancient understanding, offering modern humanity a glimpse into the sophisticated observational systems and foresight of our ancestors. The integration of geography, symbolism, and ritual demonstrates that temples functioned as multidimensional repositories of practical and esoteric wisdom, ensuring that essential knowledge would endure long after civilizations themselves had changed or vanished.
Secret societies have played a pivotal role in the preservation, interpretation, and transmission of encoded knowledge throughout history. Far from mere myth or legend, these groups acted as custodians of wisdom too powerful or dangerous to be shared openly. Temples, artifacts, and symbolic systems often required specialized understanding. Their full meaning was accessible only to those initiated into secretive networks. By controlling access to these insights, secret societies ensured continuity across generations, safeguarded against misuse, and maintained a delicate balance between revelation and concealment. The Essenes, for example, were reputed to guard sacred texts and prophetic knowledge in hidden repositories. Their meticulous records included astronomical observations, environmental patterns, and cycles of catastrophe, often encoded in symbolic or cryptic language. By restricting access to initiates, they preserved this knowledge while preventing its misinterpretation by untrained individuals. Some scholars suggest that elements of their wisdom were later incorporated into religious texts, subtly influencing mainstream narratives while keeping the more dangerous or predictive content concealed. The Knights Templar similarly exemplify the role of secret societies in preserving ancient knowledge. While their legendary treasures and manuscripts remain shrouded in mystery, evidence suggests that they inherited and safeguarded information about lost civilizations, sacred geometry, and encoded warnings embedded in temples and artifacts. Their extensive network across Europe and the Near East allowed for collection, study, and protection of these resources, creating a repository of knowledge that survived political upheaval, warfare, and religious persecution. The secrecy surrounding the Templars ensured that critical insights remained intact, even as the order itself was suppressed and disbanded. Gnostic sects and other mystical orders also contributed to the preservation of encoded knowledge. Their teachings often emphasize hidden wisdom, cycles of creation and destruction, and the interpretation of symbolic systems. Temples, artifacts, and manuscripts were sometimes used as teaching tools, with layered meanings accessible only through guided instruction. By encoding practical observation into spiritual or philosophical frameworks, these societies ensure that knowledge of catastrophic cycles, celestial events, and environmental patterns could endure within a context that minimized risk of misinterpretation. The methods employed by secret societies were both practical and symbolic. Initiates were trained to read complex patterns in architecture, decode numeric sequences, interpret spirals and serpent motifs, and align celestial observations with ritual calendars. Artifacts serve as portable instruction manuals, carrying encoded knowledge from one generation to the next. Temples acted as three-dimensional textbooks, teaching observation, timing, and interpretation in ways that combine practical and spiritual understanding. This holistic approach ensured that critical knowledge was not only preserved but actively applied, fostering an informed elite capable of understanding and responding to cycles of catastrophe. Secrecy also served a protective function. Knowledge of catastrophic cycles, rare celestial events, or environmental risks could be destabilizing if shared broadly. By limiting access, secret societies prevented widespread panic while creating a network of custodians capable of maintaining continuity and context. This deliberate concealment allowed civilizations to survive turbulent periods, as essential information was preserved within trusted channels even when public knowledge was disrupted or suppressed. In essence, secrecy was both a safeguard and a strategic tool for survival. The influence of secret societies extended beyond the immediate preservation of knowledge. They often acted as intermediaries between civilizations, transmitting insights across regions and generations. Through pilgrimage routes, trade networks, and coordinated observation, these groups ensured that encoded knowledge, whether in temple architecture, artifacts, or manuscripts, was shared selectively, maintaining coherence across time and space. This network created a continuity of understanding that could withstand the loss of texts, destruction of temples, or political upheaval, effectively serving as a living library of hidden wisdom. Modern researchers are beginning to uncover traces of these secretive custodianship networks. Manuscripts hidden in monastic libraries, symbolic motifs preserved in ritual artifacts, and architectural anomalies in ancient sites suggest deliberate encoding intended for restricted audiences. Cross-cultural similarities in symbols, myths, and temple alignments further point to the existence of knowledge-sharing networks, with secret societies acting as the guardians and interpreters of this information. The repeated motifs of spirals, serpents, and concentric circles, alongside cryptic inscriptions, hint at a shared understanding preserved in a semi-hidden tradition that spans continents and centuries. Interestingly, secret societies also played a role in balancing revelation and concealment. Knowledge was revealed gradually, often in stages aligned with training, experience, and initiation. This ensured that initiates could interpret warnings and cycles correctly, preventing misapplication or misunderstanding of powerful insights. Temples and artifacts were not simply repositories of knowledge. They were pedagogical tools, designed to teach observation, pattern recognition, and the interpretation of encoded warnings. Secret societies acted as mentors, guides, and guardians within this complex system, ensuring the knowledge was both preserved and applied responsibly. Ultimately, the role of secret societies underscores the deliberate, sophisticated, and often conspiratorial nature of ancient knowledge systems. By controlling access to temples, artifacts, prophecies, and symbolic codes, they ensured that critical warnings about environmental, celestial, and societal cycles endured across millennia. Their legacy is encoded in the architecture, myths, and objects left behind, a hidden thread connecting the past to the present. Understanding the influence of these custodians allows modern researchers to begin piecing together the full network of encoded knowledge, revealing a civilization-wide effort to preserve insight, anticipate catastrophe, and guide humanity across generations.
The culmination of centuries of encoded knowledge, prophecies, temple symbolism, celestial observation, and secret custodianship comes together in a climactic revelation. The ancients were not merely recording events. They were communicating a profound understanding of the cycles of catastrophe and survival, meticulously encoded for future generations. This synthesis unites every previous layer of discovery, from hidden symbols and architectural alignments to myths, artifacts, and secret societies, revealing a civilization-wide awareness that challenges conventional narratives of history. The temples, myths, and artifacts were not isolated curiosities. They formed an interconnected network designed to preserve essential wisdom against the eroding forces of time, suppression, and societal upheaval. Modern analysis reveals that these systems were built to endure centuries, even millennia. Temples are aligned with solar, lunar, and planetary cycles that recur across generations. Spirals, concentric circles, and serpent motifs encode timing, magnitude, and type of events, effectively creating a multi-dimensional calendar of catastrophes. Artifacts act as portable repositories of the same information, ensuring redundancy. Myths provide narrative context, allowing human behavior to be guided in response to the encoded knowledge. Secret societies acted as custodians, maintaining the integrity of the system and ensuring proper interpretation. The result is a layered, fail-safe network that links observation, symbolism, and action in a way rarely seen in human history. Consider the implications. Ancient civilizations observed patterns of floods, fire, earthquakes, and celestial anomalies, and through temples, symbols, and artifacts, encoded warnings that could survive the collapse of political systems, destruction of texts, and suppression of knowledge. These cycles were often predictable, recurring at intervals determined by celestial and environmental observation. By embedding the warning system into multiple layers, architecture, symbolism, myth, and ritual, the ancients created a robust network capable of communicating critical survival knowledge across millennia. In this sense, they anticipated not only natural catastrophes, but also the fragility of human memory and civilization itself. The encoded knowledge also challenges modern assumptions about the sophistication of ancient societies. Far from being passive or purely mystical, these civilizations demonstrated advanced understanding of astronomy, mathematics, environmental observation, and social strategy. Temples were not just religious centers. They were observatories, libraries, and classrooms. Myths were not mere stories. They were mnemonic devices, instructive warnings, and moral guidance. Artifacts were not ornamental. They were encoded tools, bridging the gap between observation and action. Secret societies were not conspiratorial fantasies. They were essential guardians, ensuring the continuity and correct interpretation of vital knowledge. Synthesis across cultures further amplifies the significance. From Egypt to Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia to India, the recurrence of spirals, serpents, concentric patterns, and flood, fire, and celestial myths suggests a shared awareness of cyclical catastrophes. Whether through independent observation, lost global networks, or ancestral knowledge, the result is an almost universal encoding of warning, preserved across time and space. This global pattern implies that humanity's ancient past contains hidden intelligence far beyond what mainstream history acknowledges, a knowledge system deliberately designed to endure, teach, and protect. The climactic revelation also underscores the importance of interpretation. Knowledge encoded in temples, symbols, and artifacts is not immediately accessible. It requires observation, pattern recognition, and context, often provided by initiates or secret custodians. Modern researchers, by piecing together temple alignments, artifact symbolism, celestial events, and mythological narratives, begin to reconstruct these messages. The system is not just historical, it remains relevant, offering insight into patterns that continue to influence environmental and societal cycles today. The ancients encoded not only warnings, but a method for understanding and anticipating recurring phenomena. Furthermore, this synthesis emphasizes continuity and resilience. Suppressed discoveries, hidden prophecies, and secretive custodians ensure that the most vital knowledge survive political upheaval, natural disasters, and cultural erosion. Each layer, myth, symbol, artifact, temple, and society, was deliberately redundant, preserving critical information in multiple forms. Even when one medium failed, others could carry the knowledge forward. This intentional design speaks to the ancients' understanding of human and environmental fragility, as well as their commitment to preserving wisdom across generations. Modern implications are profound. The encoded knowledge may guide contemporary understanding of environmental cycles, societal resilience, and the interplay between human civilization and natural forces. Rediscovering and decoding these messages could illuminate patterns previously dismissed as coincidence or myth, offering practical insight into disaster preparedness, societal adaptation, and cosmic observation. By synthesizing the lessons embedded in temples, artifacts, myths, and secret custodianship, humanity gains access to a wisdom system carefully refined over millennia. Ultimately, the climactic reveal is both humbling and enlightening. Ancient civilizations consciously encoded a multi-layered, enduring network of knowledge designed to observe, predict, and respond to the forces of catastrophe. Temples, artifacts, myths, and secret societies were not merely cultural artifacts. They were instruments of survival, foresight, and continuity. As modern researchers decode these systems, the ancients' foresight becomes strikingly clear, bridging the millennia to offer warnings, guidance, and insight that remain relevant today. Humanity's past, once obscured by suppression, myth, and mystery, now emerges as a testament to ingenuity, observation, and the enduring human desire to understand and prepare for the cycles that shape our world. In conclusion, the hidden symbols in ancient temples, once isolated curiosities, coalesce into a narrative of remarkable foresight. From environmental observation to celestial calculation, myth-making to secret custodianship, the ancients constructed a legacy designed to endure and inform. By studying and decoding this layered system, modern humanity reconnects with lost wisdom, revealing that the knowledge of cycles, catastrophe, and survival was never lost. It was deliberately encoded, awaiting those capable of understanding and preserving it once more.